Hi guys, only one United. Big one today. The boys are back in town. I'm really excited. It's been a while since we've had, I've spoken to you both separately, but never like this on my own. So I'm excited. Guys, drop a like in. Let me know that you're watching. I appreciate you all. At the minute, Reece, big man. Thank you for coming on. Only one United.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries, no worries. Rich, thank you for coming back on.
No worries, mate.
Hi, Vicky. No worries. It's going to be a good one, guys. I'll just give you a run through. We're going to probably talk about England for a bit, how it's changed, lost the game. How's everyone feel? Is there a plan B, etc. But then we'll lead into Evie, which I know a lot of people are talking about. We signed her, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about Emma Watson, and then obviously talk about Man United potentially going to a final and could be a double. Who knows? And obviously the 21s, and just get your comments in and let us know what you feel. But Rich, I'm going to come to you on this. England, they lost their first game last night. It was against Australia. I know you're watching. I know you reported the Brazil game as well, which they did win, but it was a draw at start and penalties. What do you think of England? Like, I suppose there's a lot of talk about Steph, but for me, I feel like last year they had, I suppose, Tooney and Leslie coming off the bench, and now this year it's sort of they've not got those young players coming off, and people were saying it was very wooden, it was flat, it was, Australia are a good side. Let's not beat around the bush. Hi, Molly. But it was quite an easy 2-0 win for Australia, really, in my opinion. I mean, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I never go too OTT on friendlies either way. I did write about it earlier, but I think it was one of those where a few things went wrong, which happens. Like sometimes you get a little bit of bad luck, sometimes you make individual errors. I think there were some systematic things in there that need working on. That, if I'm being honest, were probably even evident at the Euros, but obviously when you win in, people are not that bothered about the fact that you're quite predictable in what you do when it's working. Like England have always gone out wide, played out wide, and tried to get balls in the box. You're going to when you've got Chloe Kelly and Lauren Hemp and Lauren James, etc. And obviously two sort of quite targetman strikers in Russo and Daly. I think they were exposed a little bit at the back. That I'm not quite as worried about, given there was a few players missing from back there. I think the way teams are now banking up and sitting back is something that I think I said pretty quick after the Euros teams were going to start to do, and the better teams are obviously better at it and more capable of hitting you on the counter. But yeah, it was a bit of a worry to see England last week obviously struggle a little bit with Brazil's press. They didn't look comfortable. And then yesterday it was just, it was sluggish. They looked a bit tired. Obviously, it's been a long season, a lot of club games, a lot of international games. Maybe it was just one of those nights. But yeah, they just looked a little bit devoid of ideas a little bit. It was kind of teams know what they're going to do. They're going to go out wide. They're going to try and get crosses in the box. And I thought Russo was a bit isolated. I do think they need a little bit more from her in terms of sort of overall play, overall movement. But the supply line has to be there as well from the wingers, from Toon, from Stanway. Didn't really have the options to mix it up. Obviously, Kirby's out. Hemp had to come off. So it was one of those. A few circumstances didn't go their way, but there's definitely things to work on. But the good thing is, as Serena said, as Leah Williamson said, you want that now. You want that 3 months before the World Cup to work on plan Bs, to work on different ways of playing and trying to get a few players back as well. So it's not a crisis. They've lost one game in 31, but there's things to work on.
I mean, you touched on it, didn't you? Touched on Leslie, touched on Tooney maybe being better. I think Leslie has actually been really good for Man United. Sort of what you were saying about the movement, about pulling to the wing. I mean, she was part of the reason why we ended up winning. Got the first goal, the penalty, when Man United played West Ham by pulling to that wing. But I mean, here's a question by Namrata, and you can go Rich, and then you can pull in Reece. But last year it was very much like it was the old head. It was Ellen White who sort of held at the ball, and obviously then when they needed that switch, that plan B, it was Tooney and Leslie. And I feel like Tooney and Leslie is, even though they didn't start any games, they're sort of probably a big reason why we ended up winning the Euros, just because it was that plan B, it was that alternative, it was that young blood coming on fresh. I mean, what do you think for this? Tooney and Leslie are the better off at subs, but they have to come to a point when they are the starters. I mean, I think they've proved it, especially Tooney for England, even though he said he wasn't that good. But yeah, last night. But I mean, I suppose this question because it makes you think like, where's then the next Tooney? Where's then the next Leslie? I know, they're not going to be here straight away, but you need that young blood, I suppose. Those ones who are desperate to come off the bench. And like you're saying, I know you're saying about Fran Kirby, but she's not exactly the young blood, is she? Who is that next young attacking talent? Like Rich, you go then, Reece.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not suddenly ruling them out after one game. Like, I think Toon will be England's number 10 for a long time, and I think Russo will be England's striker for a long time, or they'll at least be in the squad for a long time. They've had a couple of quiet-ish games at various points, but they're not the only ones. There's a few, Stanway's been quiet the last couple of games. Hemp's been quiet. I thought she was actually all right last night until she had to come off, which was a bit of a shame. But it has sort of felt like if Lauren James hasn't been on it, they've been struggling. Maybe they're playing a little bit too much on her at the moment. Like, obviously, Lauren wasn't involved at the Euros, but at the minute, like, it feels like she's having such an influence. They're trying to get her on the ball all the time. She's obviously not a conventional winger. She's coming inside. And it changes the shape of your team. I did suggest maybe it would be interesting to see Lauren maybe as the number 10 with two wingers outside of her where she can roam and pull defenders away and open up space. Whether that's doable, who knows? But like, you just need players to step up a little bit more. Of course, they're still young. Russo's young, Hemp's young, Kelly's young, Toon's young. They've got those options there, obviously, in Daly to come in as a striker, whether that's to start or to come off the bench, or for Russo to start and her to come off the bench. They've got Ebony Salmon, who can come in. Obviously, her season's getting underway now, offers something very different in terms of her pace. You've got Beth England as another option. Kirby, like you say, doesn't sound like maybe she's going to be back. You've got the sort of experience of Jordan Nobbs, who's gone off to Aston Villa, obviously done well, got 6-7 goals, I think, since January from attacking midfield. She's an option. So there's options there to change it up and to do things a little bit different. Like I said, I'm not writing anybody off one game. Like you say, Russo and Toon had a big impact last year, and they're having a big impact for United this season. I don't think it's so much all the personnel. I just think teams are just starting to work England out a little bit. It's just, okay, force them out wide, get bodies in the box and stop them crossing it in, or stop, if you're going to put three centre-backs like Brazil did against one striker, it's going to be difficult for that striker, whoever it is. Like you say, Ellen White last year probably didn't get the credit she deserved for that sort of experienced role that she played in running defenders into the ground and holding the ball up because she wasn't scoring as much. But yeah, look, England will be fine. They'll be fine at the World Cup. Whether they win it, obviously, it's anybody's guess. But there's just things to work on. I think in terms of the next young players, people always emerge from somewhere. Lauren James has obviously emerged in terms of being an international only since the Euros. She wasn't really involved before or during then. So, and I said the other day, you only ever need a couple. The whole 19s group or the whole 23s group, they're not all going to come through. You need that handful. I think Jess Park's got a great chance as well. I think she's a very good player, as you know. And yeah, if you only get those two or three in certain positions, that's all you need realistically to have those options.
I suppose I want to come to you, Reece. I mean, we talk about it, don't we, a lot, the WSL Academy and the players that are coming through. And I agree with what Rich is saying. You don't need every 23 player to make it. But, I would have liked to have seen, like you said, Jess Park, but she's not even in the squad. So, who's that player? Grace Clinton, one. I know she's only just stepped up, but, you do want these players to be moving up rapidly. It seems like the 23s happen and then other than Mayer and Rambo recently, which are defenders, forward line, who is that? I mean, Aggie Beaver-Jones, but is she getting enough game time? What's your views on potentially these young players and the pathways and the exposure that they're getting?
I mean, just touching on England. I mean, I didn't watch any of the two England games, but I caught about 10 minutes last night, and I know we're kind of focusing on Alessia Russo here and Ella Toon, but it was always going to be about changing of a guard after Ellen White sort of moved on and then Alessia came in. But I think we've been a bit harsh here on Alessia Russo because she's at domestic level, she's playing very well, and I think if she wasn't starting for England, we'd be campaigning for her to start. But in terms of the pathways, I've always been quite critical because I think I'm not a big fan of a WSL academy. I think the whole infrastructure of it isn't fit for purpose from a player development point of view, on many different levels. So in terms of looking at the next person that's coming through for Alessia Russo, Alessia's only 24, so she's still learning as well. And this is the start of her journey as England's focal point. So I she might need 6 or 12 months to adapt to being England's main number 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is. It's a difficult one. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like, I suppose, they have just come through the Tooney and Alessia, and we're not just sort of like targeting them. I don't want people to think, oh, you're targeting them. No, it's just, I think it's when watching it last night, like what Rich said, you realised, they figured it out, and there was no sort of, like you say, plan B, and maybe bringing Jess Park will be that thing, and if say for example Kirby can't make it, then Park might be that player. I don't know, or like you say, putting James in the 10, because I think someone said before you've always thought James was a 10, and here it coming on to what I did want to touch on, under 19 who's recently joined Man United, Evie Rabjohn, and I can see Amy's question. I'm going to bring it up. Just to suppose, guys, your views on Evie Rabjohn, join Man United podcast, guys. But listen, is it wrong that there's no training fees for youth transfers? I mean, I think few journalists have wrote about it, haven't they? Shunda, she's 17 now, so obviously we're transferring her into our under 21s, and then she'll sign a contract with us when she's 18. And listen, we've had it done to us with Sophie Hilliard. I know Ruby Mace went from Arsenal to City for free. It's happening at all clubs. It's not just sort of the big clubs are stealing the young talent from, say, a Villa. It's City and Arsenal. Man United have had it done to them. It is something that needs to change. And Rich, Reece, whoever wants to jump in on this, and then views on Evie, like joining.
Do you want to go, Reece?
No, I think you're probably better starting on this one, Rich, because you had it quite recently with Lucy Watson as well, going to Chelsea. From a club's point of view, it's probably different to the agent's agenda on this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I spoke about it before. I spoke about it on here, and I mean, there's nothing you can do, until it becomes a rule or anything. I mean, I think it depends on the circumstance. I think any club doesn't want to lose a young player that you've developed for free. It probably hurts a team like Arsenal a little bit less financially because they've got money. Villa maybe to a lesser extent, but still, decent budget. But obviously when you lose a player and you're sort of bottom half of the championship and you lose a player to Chelsea that have got all the money in the world and you don't get anything for it, and that's not Chelsea's fault. But it needs changing. If you've trained a player, and that's not just us, but that's Doncaster Bells as well that trained Lucy before she came to us. They got nothing from us when we took her. We can sit here and say, well, we wanted this for Lucy, or if Mia Enderby goes at some point, we want this for Mia. Then we took Mia from Leeds United 2 years ago and paid them nothing. So the whole system needs looking at. I don't think you should be. If you can take a player under 18 because they're not on a contract, that's fair enough. If they're not on a contract, they're not on a contract. But in the men's game, you get compensation. You get training fees based on how long a player's been in your academy or compensation. I mean, in the academy at Sheffield United, we had a player on the men's side, 14, 15 years old, go to Manchester City this year, and we got like $1 million or something. And that was for a 14, 15-year-old. So, yeah, I don't see why in the women's game clubs are not getting anything up to the age of 18. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Sorry, I was on mute. Let me just say before Reece, because I did. What's your views on Evie? Do you think she's good? Do you think she's, what do you think? Good signing for United, even though it's free, and then Reece can come in.
Yeah, I've actually not seen a huge amount. Other than that, obviously I think she actually made a debut against us last year when we played them in the Conti Cup. I think they both came on at the same time, her and her sister. I think obviously she's played devs a lot. She's obviously been in the England youth teams. I think this year she's actually had an injury, which is why she's not been as involved up to this point. And obviously Villa have been playing well as well, so they haven't really had a need to throw the kids in as much as I think they did at times last season. Yeah, look, she's clearly a talented kid. I'm a little bit skeptical about some of the rumours that went around earlier in the year that all of the top four were chasing her. I think that can be a little bit overblown by agents. But maybe there was an element. Yeah, look, clubs are always watching young players. Of course they are. United, City, they'll be watching every single young player in the country just in case they develop into a top talent. So United have obviously seen something in Evie that they like in terms of succession planning. Obviously, the rumours of Emma Watson as well up at Rangers. So, yeah, she's hard to judge because she hasn't had a lot of first-team football. Some of the other young players they've signed, obviously like Grace, for example, last year, or Maya Letitia, had already had a good chunk of first-team football and were being signed as first-team players. I think with Evie, you might see her maybe go on loan. I don't think she's going to go to Man United and suddenly walk into the first team when she's not really been around the first team, even at Aston Villa. So, yeah, look, it's down to them. They've obviously seen something, whether that's Mark, Martin, Charlotte, whoever, that she's talented. She wouldn't be in the England age groups if she wasn't. I think Villa tried to offer a professional contract, so obviously they wanted to keep her around. And, yeah, it's obviously something United have done a lot. Obviously, in the men's game over the years, have always been well known for developing young talent. So she's in a good place to be developed because I think United will put a lot of effort into making sure she fulfills her potential.
Reece, do you want to touch on anything? I suppose the last question, or I suppose this one. What do you think? High training fees set by Laverty, could it drain talent from the UK if we start introducing, like what Rich says, £1 million for a kid? I mean, I don't think it would be £1 million, but if it ends up being too big, what do you feel? That's, I suppose, a counter argument.
Levante is slightly different. I mean, the clubs in Spain have got to put a release clause in contracts as part of their regulations. So, it's the same with Barcelona on the men's side. You hear like Gavi, for example, has got this £1 billion release clause. It's part of the Spanish regulation, so it's slightly different over in Spain to where it is in England. In terms of the no compensation and the no training fees argument, this is one thing that I think the WSL academies isn't fit for purpose, and I think it's a massive issue. The girls that play in the WSL academy are pretty much full-time footballers, but in most days are exactly the same as what the first team are in, near enough across the schedule of the 7 days. In men's football, the 16 to 18-year-olds are on scholarship contracts, so they're getting a wage, they're getting their education, and they're living the life of a professional footballer for 2 years, or a 3-year scholarship, depending on what it is. In women's football, the girls don't get anything. So they're a full-time footballer between 16 and 18, but they don't get a wage. I'm a massive advocate that if clubs don't want to pay a wage, then you cannot demand a transfer fee. You can't have everything from the club's perspective. But for me, there needs to be an introduction of scholarship contracts in women's football because the 16 to 18-year-olds are full-time footballers pretty much. And it's not fair to essentially be exploiting them to go in 5 days a week, 6 days a week for nothing. And with the influx of players that are coming into the Super League from overseas, there is limited pathway. And then, for example, if Man United are going and getting Emma Watson from Scotland and then Evie Rabjohn from Villa, does that then hinder the pathway for internal players in the 21s at Man United? I think it does. And, you know, Chelsea have been battered for this on the men's side for years and years and years in terms of hoarding young talent. Who knows if women's football is going to follow suit?
Rich, what do you make of that? Because obviously you're a Sheffield boy, and then that you said you brought Watson in, you brought Mia in, and like you're saying, like you could end up losing Mia, you ended up losing Lucy. And I know it's a bit different because you're a part-time club, so technically no one is paid like full-time. But you know, a club like yourself, even a look at Durham, they've started in the 21s. Can they afford to pay? Like what Reece says, the scholarship. I'm sure he'll tell us. But like, what's your view? Go on then, Reece. Go on.
No, I'm interested to hear the club's perspective on this actually first.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, unless I've misinterpreted it, I mean, obviously I don't deal with the admin stuff at Sheffield United, but you know, Reece obviously said clubs not being willing to pay, but you cannot put a player on a professional contract till they turn 18. You can put them into your first team at 16, which we've done a lot. Obviously, we did it with Lucy. We did it with Mia. We've done it with a lot of girls, Tamara Wilcott, Sinead Muir, Ruby Clark, etc. But you cannot put them on a pro contract until they're 18, so you can't start paying them until they're 18. So whether it's clubs being willing to or not, unless I'm mistaken, and Reece will know because he will deal with contracts a lot more than I do, but we can't pay them as far as I'm concerned until they turn 18. So I don't think it's actually a question of whether clubs want to or not. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure some clubs probably wouldn't because budgets are still tight, but I think that has to come from a change in the FA's rules as to, like you say, if scholarship contracts come in, which again we deal with at Sheffield United on the men's side, where they do get paid, but we don't have scholarship contracts. They don't go on contracts until they're 18. So as far as I'm aware, until they're 18, they can't be paid at the minute whether clubs want to or not.
No, I understand that. I think from our side, I'd like to see an introduction of the scholarship contracts into women's football, because if you look at the girls in the WSL Academy, they're doing pretty much the same week as what an under 18s or under 21s player would be at Sheffield United, because they're getting their education from the club or external, depending on what the player's circumstances are. They're essentially a full-time player in terms of their scheduling across the 7 days, but they're doing it for free, where in men's football, they're doing it for £150 a week or £200 a week. And I represent numerous first and second and third year scholars in men's football, and the wages are fairly non-existent in the grand scheme of things. However, by the clubs giving the players something, it essentially creates an asset for the football club, which then generates a transfer fee. But I just think from a player's perspective, if you're not giving us a wage, then how can you demand a transfer fee? I think there's a massive balance there in power towards a club side. If you don't want to pay us a wage, but you want to demand a transfer fee. So I do think there needs to be an introduction of some form of scholarship contract into women's football. The FA give clubs an enormous amount of money. I think a proportion of that money each season does need to be kept to one side for the scholarship, especially if you know that you've got someone in the under 21s in the development team that could potentially attract interest. Whether that's a youth international, I don't know, but yeah, I just think there needs to be some introduction of a youth contract into women's football.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question from Vix, and I'm guessing you'll know better, Reece, but I suppose, do they get any kind of expenses going? I mean, I suppose this is now a question that I've changed that. You said no there, but if they're on dual and, dual registration where they have to go on loan to, I don't know, say Sheffield's got a dual, will it be Sheffield that give any expenses, or will it be on the parent club, or how does that work then? Do you know?
It depends on how the deal's structured. That could be, for example, Man United that pay the expenses and then they kind of re-invoice Sheffield United, or it could be Sheffield United that pay direct to the player. It depends on how the deal's structured, but typically on a dual reg, there's still no expenses. So for young players, they're essentially playing for free, and it's costing them money to play football. I've got players now that are in first teams at 17, 18, and training with a first team every single day, still don't get paid. And what we find as an agent is, if there's a player between 16 and 18 in the development squad, they actually don't get much publicity or zero publicity half the time from clubs, typically because the clubs don't want to raise awareness on how good these young players are, because they're going to lose them. which is obviously where we come in as an agent.
I suppose then, how does it work? For example, Emma Watson. I don't know how it works in Scotland if she is on a contract or not, but Evie Rabjohn, say for example, you were her agent. Would they get a fee when Man United signed her? How does that work?
Who, the agent?
Yeah.
Again, every deal's different.
Okay.
I would expect so on a deal like that, but again, that'll be a pre-agreement, which she'll sign essentially when she turns on the day that she turns 18. Stuff like that again is not uncommon in football. If there's a player at 16, where they kind of have a pre-agreement, so the day that they turn 18. But again, in terms of agents' fees, I can't imagine it being a lot, because again, no one actually knows how good Evie Rabjohn is because she's never played senior football really, in comparison to some of the other players that probably Man United are going after.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people are saying now Namrata is saying, can there be an 18 who's in the first team and not given a contract? I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah, you can sign non-contracts. To be honest, without kind of divulging too much, I think even if there's a contract in place, half the time the contract's not worth the paper it's written on for the amount of money that's there. So I wouldn't get too bogged down in the word contracts. As agents, half the time players come to us and say, I want to get out of the club. But if they've got a contract that still entitles them to be at that club for another 2 or 3 years, our job's to essentially find a way out of that contract. So I certainly wouldn't get too bogged down on the terminology of contracts.
Yeah, I think Amy's saying Watson. I think they're the Scottish ones on a pro deal. I mean, she lit it up. I don't know, Reece, if you've seen Scotland, but she got 2 goals at Hampden. I mean, Rich, how much you know of her? Because she did play against Benfica as well. Got a goal there in UEFA Champions League. That's one, I suppose, more so because we have seen her in Rangers. She's been scoring goals there. Like I said, Champions League, now 2 goals at Hampden, making a Scottish debut. That looks like a good one for Man United. I know we're talking about talent hoarding, but I'm happier with this process that they're going down, trying to find the best young talent and actually succeeding in it. Like you said, Maya, Grace, now these 2, it seems to be the place to go if you are a young talent. Man United, maybe. I'm not saying that talent won't go Chelsea and Arsenal and this, but I do think, I don't know, like I said, Maya, she came to United, she got in the first team, Tooney's got in the first team, Leslie's got in the first team of England. I'm not saying it's the same for everyone, but what's your view on the way that we're doing it, the way that we're getting these young players in?
Yeah, I think there's always a balance. Like, the top clubs are always going to go and try and get the best young players whilst also trying to get the established stars. You've seen that. Chelsea signed Micah Hamano in January, obviously loaned her out to Hammarby in Sweden. But they'll still try and get the best players in the world if they can. I like Emma. Little bits I've seen of her. I can't profess to watching the Scottish League regularly, and outside of the top 3, it's got some work to do competitiveness wise anyway. But yeah, I watched some of the clips and the highlights. Obviously, with the rumours that she was coming down here, I was interested to see how she did for Scotland. She reminds me a little bit in terms of that sort of tenacity and the willingness to get forward and obviously influence games in terms of goals, assists and whatnot, sort of similar to Erin Cuthbert in a way. I think she's got that energy about her, that, like I said, that tenacious side to her. But obviously she can score goals as well. So she's a kid. There's not going to be any rush with her. Again, she might be another one that maybe comes down, goes on loan. Clinton may come back next season and take that sort of squad role, and someone like Emma may go out. Who knows? I don't know what their plans are for her, but she seems like a very talented young player, and obviously, yes, slightly different situation to Rabjohn in terms of she's quite obviously senior international already for her country, and obviously, playing week in, week out for Rangers. So, yeah, I'd say it looks like they've got themselves a very, very good young player.
Reece, I suppose that question to you. What do you think of, United making these sort of youth signings? I know you talked about Rabjohn and it potentially is blocking up the pathway for other young players, but they have signed down Jess and they have signed down Safia Middleton, and then there's talk that they might sign down others, and then they've got a lot of players on dual registration that I don't know. I mean, you know better than me, both of you. So what's your views on, I suppose, Man United and the youth signings?
I quite like it because it shows long term thinking. However, you've also just hit the nail on the head. They've got a cohort of players currently in the development squad. They've got a cohort of players currently on dual reg and on loan, and now they're bringing some more in. So I do think there has to be a turnover of players. So players do have to leave, and then there's going to be a transitional period of the players that are currently on dual reg and on loan in the Championship. If they are going to break into the team, there has to be that transition at some point. And when does that transition come? Because now if you're pushing for the Champions League and you're pushing for titles, to send a player on a dual reg to the Championship and then all of a sudden expect them to come back into pre-season with a first team at Man United and expecting them to hit the ground running, you're asking a lot of a young player. I mean, just one more thing on that. We've got a player at the minute at a top academy, and she just turned 18, and we've actually turned down the contract. And this is a top 4 club in the WSL, and basically the vision that got sold to us, it would be a 2-year contract, and then in season 1 we'll go to the Championship. I know that I can send it to the Championship without the WSL club. The finances aren't fantastic, so there's no financial incentive to stay attached to that football club. And then you look at the top 4 clubs in England and you think, is it realistic that in the next 2 or 3 years that this 18-year-old is going to break into the first team, unless they are exceptional? And in all honesty, there's probably not that many players currently in the WSL academy that can jump straight into the first team, if any, in a top 4 club in the WSL, in my opinion. Because the jump between WSL academy and first team football, even in the Championship and even in Tier 3, is massive.
I mean, I'm right as saying we're following the Chelsea model, sign them, send them out on loan, and then sort of talked about Jamie Lee Napier, who came from the Scottish League, and they sent her on loan, and it is a concern. It is, I don't know, because like what Rich says, with Man United, that's what we're built on. We're built on young players, even players maybe in the men's team that a lot of fans don't like, Scott McTominay, but I was there when he made his debut, and that's what it's about. And then now there's talk that they might sell him for 50 million to Newcastle or something like that, or but it's I don't know. It's suppose it's what's needed, because I look at, I mean, I don't like naming players, but I look at, like you're saying, dual reg, Niamh Murphy, and I feel like when I watched her in the Devs final and last year, and then she's gone to Blackburn, but she looks like a totally better player through having that experience. But yeah, then there is that. Well, what is Man United going to give her more than potentially? Because you said they're not getting paid. They're so many years old. It's hard, and I don't know what the answer is. I'm not the FA, or I'm not Man United's chief, whatever. But that gap is big, and it's sort of, in a way, with Man United and where we're at, it's going to only get bigger. And I mean, Vix has said a thing. Where do we stand now in terms of different targets, depending on getting Champions League? And for me, I want 3 world-class players, but then I feel like players will leave, and then say a Grace will come in as that squad player. But then I suppose someone like that, you need them to play week in, week out. But I mean, the manager has always said once more games, there'll be more chances. So then when you play a Reading or whatever, if you play that after a Champions League game or whatever, you're going to need, Grace maybe to start that, or whoever, dev player, Evie, Emma, these are the ones. Go on, Reece, I can see you.
No, I do think that, again, it's a massive jump to essentially be a squad player in a Champions League game when you're used to playing in the Championship. How many players realistically have gone from a Championship to the Super League in the last 2 or 3 years and actually going to be in a success within year 1 or year 2? Very, very few. I know you mentioned Niamh Murphy, but on the flip side of that, I can name you 20 or 30 players that have gone to the Championship from a WSL academy, and within 6 months are on dual reg to Tier 3. Look, I don't want to get too many people in trouble by revealing this, but I've got text messages on my phone, even as recent as last week, from managers in the top 2 divisions asking who's available in the summer, but they don't want kids. They don't want players under 22 or 23 or 21, and they'll stipulate that to me on a text. So there is a stigma with the WSL academy players with it is kids football, and there does need to be a transition. And look, some advice that I give to to majority of players in WSL academies that we represent is go to tier 3, go and transition into senior football. If you're a goalkeeper, if you're a centre back, go and play in front of someone that's twice your weight, twice your height, and twice your size. And go and play in an environment where people's jobs are on the line because you've never been exposed to that. Where on a Wednesday afternoon in the WSL Academy, you're playing against 16-year-olds. When a cross comes in the box, there's probably not that much contact. But again, just sort of going back to what you said there, I know you mentioned Grace Clinton, but fantastic player. But then to expect her next season to be part of a squad player within a Champions League environment, that jump is massive from being in a championship environment.
What's your view, Rich? Go on.
Yeah, I've got quite strong views on this, really, because it comes back a little. I mean, obviously, I've worked in academy football, I've worked with the girls, and I've worked with the lads as well. And it comes back to kind of what I said earlier about England, and when you only need a handful to make it through. And there's this, I don't know if there is a perception or not, but it feels like there is, that people say, okay, we've got a good academy, they all have to make it through. They don't, and they won't. It's not realistic. It just isn't. You know, I said to you last year, Nat, Man United's youth team might have gone and won everything. They might have won the Youth Cup. They might have won the Youth League. 99% of them will never play for Manchester United. That's not what academy football's about. It's about giving them a platform that if you get the odd exceptional one that makes it through, i.e. you take a Lauren James, for example, when she was at Arsenal, that will, but you have to be exceptional. If you're not, you are not going to make it in one of the top teams. That's a reality. But players can go there, they can train, they can develop, they can go on loan. They might get a move somewhere else. I think the reality is it's very difficult. It's really difficult, you know. And, you know, you take Lucy Watson, for example. Lucy's a great talent. For Lucy to go and play regularly ever at Chelsea, when you've got Sam Kerr and Pernille Harder and Guru Wrighton, and, you know, one of those leaves, they go out and sign another world-class player. You take, you know, jokes aside with Reece, obviously, Alice Higginbottom going to Chelsea. It's exceptionally difficult because if they want a midfielder, they'll go out and spend $500,000 on Grace Gayoro or somebody else. So it's just about making sure they have a career. You take United's kids, Kira Barry, Alicia Ahern, whoever else, if they go on loan and do well and get a move maybe to a bottom-end WSL club or a top-end championship club, that's great. They're still going to have a career out of it. We've seen that. We've got lads everywhere at the minute that do really well in academy football because it's academy football. You're playing against kids your own age. You're playing against people your own size. Like Reece said, you're not really being tested. You know, if you're the best 16-year-old against other 16-year-olds, that's easy. We've got lads that go out and go on loan in the National League or League Two or National League North. Great. They still get a career. If they go and play in League Two for their whole life, that's a career. The reality is to go and make it at the club you're actually at when they're going to go and sign world-class players, it's almost impossible. And I think we put this pressure on that these kids have to make it at the club they're at. They don't. Aggie Beever-Jones, you mentioned her before, is a great example. She won't play regularly for Chelsea, ever. She won't. But she went on loan. She did well. She got a little step up to Everton. If she goes and has a career at Everton, she's done incredibly well out of it. Done incredibly well. You know, so these kids, like, yeah, the reality is they're not all going to make it through. And if you can go and get something better, if United look at their academy and go, well, Emma Watson's better than this group, or Evie Rabjohn's better than this group, you're going to go and do that. And those kids will go out on loan or they'll go off somewhere else and they'll make a career for themselves somewhere else. They're not all going to come through and make it at Man United.
No one's asking all to come through, but this is what then gets me. I mean, two questions in this, and I suppose San Devil is sort of saying, even in the men's team, yeah, they didn't all make it through apart from the class of 92. But what has happened in the men's team, there's been one. There's always one. It's like I said, there was the Rashford. There was, you know, Lingard eventually, now he's left. Pogba, I know he then left and came back. There's always one. Scott McTominay, even in the tough times, there's always one. And I just feel like there has to be, I don't know, maybe there won't because the Women's League and the way it's set up. And like I said, the gap's maybe too big in the men's. But, I mean, for me, I would like to see like a Papa John where, like what Reece says, they do go out and play the tier 3, the tier 4. You know, we're seeing who's at the top of tier 3, Burnley and Forest. I want Man United, R21s now, who is, a lot of them are 16. I want them to go and play Burnley and get smashed, you know, or whatever, you know, because it's not like smash, but you know what I mean? Like have that experience of playing Saf went out 2-3 times and they got battered. Cov were at the bottom, they've gone down. And for me, I don't know. As a Man United fan, you just want to see one. And I feel like when that one does come through, whoever it is, like you just said there, Barry, Simpson, Ahern, whoever it is, God, the party will start, because that's what Man United is about. Youth.
I'd also like to see some clubs adopting a bit of a selling method as well to become sustainable as a business. I mean, if you look at some other teams in men's football, like Crewe, like Doncaster, like Rotherham United, especially a lot of South Yorkshire clubs where I'm based, they bring someone through at 17, 18, and the club will actively be phoning other clubs to come and buy this player, because that's how they generate income. And I do think there's a lot of the deals now in women's football, there's money exchanging between clubs. A lot of, I would say 80% of the deals now. I'd like to see a lot of clubs adopting that sort of methodology of, let's put a bit of money into the WSL Academy in terms of the marketability of the players that are coming through the WSL Academy and into the first team. And then let's see if we can potentially move them on to a bigger club and get a bit of money in, because that might fund 3 or 4 first team players for us next season. And I do think a lot of people in women's football need to maybe think outside the box instead of just expecting the FA to give them a load of money at the start of the season, and or the men's side of a club, and then sort of just funding the football club that way. Can we make it self-sustainable a little bit?
100%. I mean, it's going back to what Vic said about signing the 2 or 3 people if we do make Champions League. But I'm guessing what I'm hearing is a lot of things are being held up by the sale of Man United. And I know maybe more so on the men's side if this affects, but they're struggling because the budget is set, but they're saying they haven't got the cash flow, and that's going to affect it. And I mean, what do you think, Rich? And then Reece, I know we talked about this, but I mean, do you think the sale is affecting things for United, or do you think it's just solely they're waiting to see that they finish in the Champions League and then they'll be like, bang, Ada Hegerberg, there's all your money, come on, let's go?
I will do a dare if Man United sign Ada Hegerberg this summer. I'm enjoying the club on the takeover thing, because obviously we're in the same position. So, look, it probably does affect things in terms of, like, I think your budgets are generally quite set, but there's always a bit of uncertainty, obviously, in terms of, like you say, are you in the Champions League or are you not in the Champions League, and everything that comes with that. Personally, I think the concept of saying you've qualified for the Champions League in the women's game is a little bit different, in terms of there's a vast difference depending on where United finish in the league. If they finish first, they more than likely go straight into the group stage. If they finish second, you're looking at the second qualifying phase. If you finish third, you're looking at going straight in, and United would be unseeded. So unless they get a lucky run, it's still actually going to be very hard for United to get into the Champions League proper. So I don't think players are going to be sat there, absolutely grasped on, I'll join Man United if they qualify for the Champions League, because by the time you actually find out if they're in the Champions League proper, the transfer window probably will have shut. So, yeah, there's always a bit of uncertainty. Of course there is, because it holds things up. The current owners are not going to plough money in if they're going to be walking away in a couple of months' time, and the new owner can't plough money in because they don't own the club. So, yeah, obviously we've experienced that at Chef. Certainly, I mean, it's, don't get me wrong, much lesser effect on the women's side, because the fees are a lot lower, the wages are a lot lower. If the takeover with United at the minute has a massive bearing on the women's budget, I'd be really surprised, because you're talking minute figures in comparison to what Manchester United's men's team will be spending. That's the same with us. And obviously I can't discuss, decisions and conversations that are happening within the club at the moment, but I know we're quite well on with next season and looking at next season, because whatever happens with the takeover, the fees you're talking about on the women's side are nothing in comparison to the men, particularly if the men get promoted to the Premier League. So it will have an effect, but I think it will have a much bigger effect on the men's side the longer it rumbles on, because you're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds on players. I think Mark and Martin will generally be able to get on with planning what they want to do, and I think sometimes it's a little bit overblown. I'm sure there's uncertainty. Look, everyone wants to know who your club's going to be owned by, but I can't see it having a humongous impact on the women's budget and the women's transfer window.
I mean, Reece, what do you think's having a bit of more effect? Is it the fact that Man United couldn't, Champions League? I think I've heard people saying things like there's a Champions League list and then there's a non-Champions League list, which I suppose there will be, because there will be players who basically saying, I'm not coming if you're not in the Champions League. I understand what Rich was saying, but or do you think, if we want a player and a club doesn't want to sell, have we got cash to buy that player, or like the men's, is it staggered? Just tell us what your thoughts are.
I'm a little bit of a cynic. I do agree with Rich. I am a little bit of a cynic in terms of he's getting hindered by the takeover rumours. When a takeover gets so far down the line, the club goes into an embargo. So until an embargo gets put on Man United, until that takeover gets completed, then for me, I can't see how it's hindering. However, I do agree slightly with the Champions League list and the non-Champions League list. However, just to play devil's advocate on that, I think if you're signing a Champions League player, you're going to be paying decent wages. If you don't get into the Champions League, you're possibly going to have to overpay for the same player. And then is there actually that much difference then between the Champions League wages and the non-Champions League wages? Because you're going to sell the dream to the player if you don't get in the Champions League. We'll give you slightly more money. Come and get us into the Champions League next season. So that's how you'll overpay for a player. But I don't think there'll be that much difference between the Champions League wages and the non-Champions League wages. From an agent's point of view on this, I would never have a player sat around waiting for a takeover to go through to move that player. I'm in tight discussions at the minute with Birmingham. Birmingham's put a statement out this morning about their ownership of the football club. Birmingham are still moving forward. And I know it's slightly different in terms of finances and the levels, but similar situation to Man United.
And I suppose let's get into it then. I suppose Man United, best season so far, but there is still that thing where, no matter, we're always, I don't even know what she's on about. I think she's on about the men. The women are always like the third, fourth. But I mean, we're always fourth. Fed up, tired. I think we've had these conversations, both us three here, me and Rich. Finally we're in a semi-final. Brighton, I know someone's saying before, you can't expect 4-0 again. Listen, I expect 4-0. Yeah, I expect Man United to go out there, blow Brighton away, and then they're in a final. But yeah, what Vic says, will we get top 3? Because then after that semi-final, it's Arsenal, it's Villa, and then obviously right towards the end, it's City. Those are the 3 games I was worried about. I was worried about Brighton away on that pitch. I'm worried about Villa away on their pitch. I don't know. I wanted a draw for Arsenal City. Arsenal ended up winning. I mean, what do you think of the title race? I don't think we're in a title race, but I think we sort of bottled it, When we went to Chelsea, we should have done a lot better because, England fell to it, just a pumped up ball long, Stoke style, and then she scored. There's no creativity after that. Listen, I'm not even going to get into Honor and Mary and Leslie. Mary's got a thing anyway. Honor and Leslie, only God knows, I'm fed up with it. But sorry, Yvonne. But James is saying we're going to finish first and win the FA Cup. I'd like to win an FA Cup. I really, really would. But if we finish 4th and win an FA Cup, yeah, it's not. I don't know. I don't know. Rich.
It's been a crazy season to have obviously 4 teams as closely matched. I think it's 3 points between the top 4. I think you are in a title race. I do. I think they all are. I think even City are just. I think it's unlikely now that they will win it. After obviously the defeat last week, obviously Chelsea have a game in hand, so they'd go 5 points ahead of City if they won that game in hand. But if they won the game in hand, United are 2 points behind. I think if you're 2 points behind with 5 games to go, you're in a title race whether you want to be or not. Like you say, I think their priority obviously will be Champions League because they haven't had that before. If they won the league, it's obviously a massive bonus. The game next week's obviously huge against Arsenal. Arsenal obviously have to play Chelsea, so it's not definitive. Like you say, you have to play Villa. I think Arsenal have to play Villa. You've got to play City. City have to play Everton, I think, as well, which is tough. So look, they're all tough at this point because the teams at the bottom of the league, your Readings, your Leicesters, your Brightons, they're all fighting for their lives. They're all trying not to get relegated. So probably the ones you might want to play are those a little bit caught in the middle. You sort of your West Hams, your Liverpools that really aren't. They're not going down, but they're not fighting for Europe. Yeah, I mean it's a weird one. Like we've all discussed this in the media, like privately, publicly, about how crazy it kind of is that you're talking about these 4 teams and one of them's going to walk away with the trophy and one of them's not even going to get in the Champions League, and like that's how brutal it is. And it's tough in a way because it's not a title race where you look at it and go, they're all stuttering over the line, they're all faltering, they're all struggling. They're all there because they've all been really good. United are the top scorers in the league, which is pretty impressive when you look at what Chelsea have got in attack and obviously what Arsenal had in attack, at least for the first half of the season. And they've also got the best defence. I mean, they're not even into double figures yet in terms of the goals that they've conceded, which across 17 games is ridiculous, to be honest. And when you take into account 6 of them were in games against the top 3, so it'll be hard to criticise any of them if they miss out, to be honest, because I think they have all had good seasons. I think United have had a good season, like you said at the start, their best season they've had yet. I think City, bar those first couple of games, have been really, really good. I think they'd be disappointed they didn't get something at Arsenal, particularly having gone 1-0 up and Arsenal having played midweek. Chelsea have been Chelsea. I don't think they've ever hit the heights that Chelsea can, but they're consistent. They win games. And Arsenal had that little dip, obviously, after Miedemar and Mead got injured, and they were kind of adapting to a new way of playing and a new look attack. But they've sort of really regrouped and come on strong. So, and I do think United will make the final. Like you say, they'd be incredibly disappointed not to beat Brighton at home, especially having gone down and beat them quite comfortably away. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because like if you're third on the final day and you finish third, everyone goes, well done, had a great season. If you drop points on the last day and you finish 4th, everyone's saying it's a disaster based off one game, when actually the whole season as a whole has been pretty successful. Like they have developed, they have improved, they've got results against the top teams, which they didn't last season. They've picked up wins against teams that they were previously drawing against last season. So it's going to be a crazy last month. It really is. Like I can't predict it. I don't think anyone can predict it in terms of who's going to win, because you throw the FA Cup in, you throw the Champions League in. Obviously, different factors. Teams have got a lot of games left. Chelsea have got to go and probably get the run around by Barcelona twice in a week, and Arsenal have to go to Germany. So yeah, if you ask me who's going to win it and who's going to miss out, I honestly could not tell you at this point. It's going to be a crazy month.
Reece, who's going to win it? Who's going to miss out?
Honestly, I think I agree with what Rich said. It's the most interesting time of the season. But everyone's fighting for something, except from probably 2 teams or 3 teams. It's near impossible to predict.
What I will say is, if Man United finish 4th, I don't care what Rich says, it's failure. Man United finish 2nd and 3rd, it's success. Obviously, if you win it, it's success. Well, that's the only place that it's a failure. And I don't care if it's because I can pull out games where Everton 0-0 at home. Even that Chelsea one, there was no. It was. I mean, I don't know what you thought of that game, both of you, but that Chelsea game, that was just. It was there for the taking. There was no Guru Wrighton. There was no Erin Cuthbert. Poor substitutions. Bringing on Rachel Williams for Ella Toon. Bringing on Lucia Garcia for 4 minutes. And I think she's been fantastic. And I think her not been playing enough. I think Vilda's really coming into it, not been playing enough. And I suppose Reece, as an agent, when you're seeing your players sign for a club and then not playing, and then, you know, I suppose then drop from national teams and things like that, like, and I suppose you're hearing the way that the manager's sort of saying, not blaming the player, but blaming the player. But then I suppose they're putting in performances and winning games and scoring goals, like Lucia coming on. I think she scored 4 and 4, and he's saying, "Oh, we need more of that," and then he's not starting her. So what? I mean, does it frustrate you as an agent?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I'm not sure about blaming the player for whatever goes wrong. I mean, especially if that manager's bought a player in the first place. I mean, in terms of frustration from my side, I just get frustrated when a team signs one of my players and then plays them in a different position and then wonders why they're not getting the best out of the player. But yeah, look, in terms of the emotion of a player, where the first person that the player rings, as soon as they go out of the changing room on a Sunday afternoon, if anybody saw my phone on a Sunday afternoon from about 5:30 onwards till about 10 o'clock, it is unbelievable. So yeah, we from the agent side, we ride every single roller coaster with the player, but certainly wouldn't have a manager out and out blaming one of my players for anything. In all honesty, you know, a player doesn't go out on the pitch to make mistakes. But if you're putting them in the wrong position that they're not comfortable in, then for me, that's on the coaching staff as opposed to the player.
Rich, what do you think? I mean, like I said, that Chelsea game, and you can say what you want about Chelsea. For me, it was there for the taking. It, you know, I think it's just a few poor substitutions, and then, like I said, he comes out and says things that you wouldn't see, and then, you know, and I feel like a lot of people in the media, they're sort of coming around to it now, but he is getting the criticism of, even though like they are top or whatever, second, I don't know, but, you know, he's gone out, he's signed 3 or 4 or 5, he's signed 10 players, and he's really not even using them. And what's your viewpoint, I suppose? Because I don't want to tread over it, but it gets that frustration. I mean, even Eldon, that City game too, and these are the moments. I think even United fans know the moments because we've been there.
Sorry, Rich, can I just jump in on that? I represent numerous managers, so don't always put it on Mark screen. It might not be Mark screen if it's actually signing the players.
One, Rich.
Yeah, look, I didn't actually see the Chelsea game. I didn't see it in full. I saw some highlights. I saw the goal, saw the penalty appeals. Yeah, I think there's definitely things there you can say he could be quicker to react in terms of subs and whatnot. But the one thing I always say is managers always have a reason for doing something or not doing something, whether that's Mark Skinner or any manager in any game, in any sport, anywhere in the world. You can't have a perfect season. You can't play 22 games and win all 22. I know obviously every team will get to the end of the season and look back and go, what if we'd done this? What if we'd done that? I mean, if Chelsea don't win the league, you could stretch all the way back to the first day of the season when they lost to Liverpool. You know, if Man City don't win the league, you can stretch your way back to the first game of the season when they lost to Aston Villa. You know, Arsenal drew 0-0 with West Ham a few weeks ago, battered them, didn't score. You know, it happens. Like you say, United dominated Everton, drew 0-0. It might be a costly 2 points, but it happens. They can all point to that. Every single one of them can point to that. I'm adamant, and I'll stand by it, that I think United have had a very good season. I had my question marks at the start of the year. Now you can go back and watch it. We did a podcast at the start of the year, and I said United would finish 4th. That was my belief. They might still, but over the course of the season, they've done better than I thought they would. I think the two things that you wanted to see, like I said before, was starting to turn the draws into wins, which bar that Everton game they've done, you know, in the Brighton games, the Tottenham games, the West Hams, the Readings, they've turned those into wins, and they needed to start getting points in the big games. And, you know, the Arsenal result was huge in terms of that. Yeah, City, I watched the City game and they probably could have gone for it a little bit more, but look, realistically, you're playing a very good team. You know, you're playing a team that can punish you. And I think a point at the Etihad was a better point for United than it was for City, particularly at that time. I think, yeah, the Chelsea games. I mean, there was clear improvement from last year across the 2 games against Chelsea. You conceded 10 goals last season. You conceded 9 goals in the whole of the league this year. So there's definite improvements. Is anybody perfect? No. Mark can always do a better job. Gareth Taylor can do a better job. Jonas, Emma, whoever can do a better job. No one's infallible. No one's beyond questioning. But I do think United are on the right track. That's always been my opinion through this season. And my opinion wouldn't change based off 1 or 2 games towards the end of the year, whether they come first or fourth. I think there's been an overall development there, and the curve has gone the right way for the most part. In terms of the signings, I get the frustration. I do get the frustration. The one thing I said, I think when Mark became the United manager and people were saying, is he good enough? What's he going to be like? And me and you were talking about this privately the other week, and I said he will wind you up, and I think he has. I said his style would take time for the players to get used to, and I think it did. But I said he would win you football matches, and he's winning football matches at the moment. It's not always perfect, but he's winning football matches. And I think in terms of the players, it's like you say, last year, I think it took them a bit of time to get used to it. You know, you had players, you came to me and said players were questioning his style, but it started to click towards the end of last year. And I think this year it was always natural he was going to stick with that core that had worked with him for a year, that knew his style. So your Leah Galtons, your Katie Zellams, your Ella Toons, your Russos, your Millie Turners, your Blundells, etc. And those coming in that have to learn it, that have to get used to not just his style, but the league, the team, we're going to take that bit of time. I think Lucia is definitely the closest to breaking in. I think she's a really fabulous player. And I think she will become a very regular starter for Man United. Obviously, Maya has, because they needed a centre-back, and she's taken that spot rather than Tunkara. And I think others will. I think, you know, they've signed some really good young players. So, yeah, look, it's development. They're improving. They've improved this year, whatever happens. But yeah, as we said and Reece said, they could finish first, they could finish fourth. Who knows? But I do think overall there's been improvement. And look, if they go and get to a cup final this weekend, that's a nice little bonus and a day out for you guys at Wembley.
I mean, I'm going to touch on Nam's question above this, but like you're saying, his players, the players that stick with him, and I said I wasn't going to touch on it, but well done. If we lose 2 key players, Russo and Honor, do we go back in multiple levels? Reece, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Man United need the best in class on the men's and the women's side. It's going to be, there's not many players in their positions that are better than them two. So it is going to be a costly replacement if they do let them both go. So I do think it's critical that they tie them down sooner rather than later. I'm not quite sure why it's dragged on, unless the players are wanting to leave. That is my only observation on that side. I can't see it being the agent that's holding it up. So it's got to be on the club side or the player side.
I mean, Rich, what you probably know it better than me and Reece, and it does seem like that. And it seems like, I mean, I saw an article from Sky who sort of said Man United are top of the league, like you said, all these great things that you've said, they're winning games, they're going to the first final. Leslie Russo is a Man United fan. I know that's not just all of it, but like they sort of asked the question of what's gone wrong. I mean, with Honor, there's that excuse of, oh, she's from Spain, etc., etc. But what is going wrong with them two?
They're in demand. They've signed 2 players who, you know, when they signed Russo, I think it was seen as a coup, you know, because she was coming back from college. Everybody knew how good she was. There was a lot of clubs that wanted her. You know, Arsenal at that time wanted to sign her. So it's not a surprise that they want to now. And she chose United, who were the team at the time that was developing a little bit. And she probably chose United because she knew she had a better chance of playing. at that point, Arsenal had Miedemar and Mead, etc. So, Badger was a little bit different in terms of we didn't know as much about her in England, but obviously they'd done their research because they picked up a fabulous player. The thing I always said is, if you're going to have top players, you need to grow with them. If the players start to outgrow you, then they're going to go and get something better. And I mean, the fact that a team was throwing £500,000 at Alessia Russo, even if there was a hint of desperation about that in terms of it coming last minute, whether that's her actual value, I'd be surprised, to be honest with you. I don't think many other clubs would have thrown £500,000 at her at this point. But you have to, and look, that's the thing with Champions League. If you get in the Champions League and you can prove that you can stay there and you can get in the group stages, players are going to look at you and go, "This can be me." If you can't, they're going to go and get something better. They're going to go if they can go and get a team that is in the Champions League that's going to win trophies and pay them more money, they're going to do it. So it's on the field, it's off the field, it's what you can offer them on the field, off the field. But look, again, football's brutal. I said this before. Football is brutal. Fans are fickle. Everybody's fickle, and it will be a loss if you lost the players. But players come and go, and they get replaced. Like if owner goes, the worst case scenario, and next season Jade Riviere starts and she's ripping it up and she's doing brilliantly well, fans will move on. Fans will forget. If they sell Russo and another striker comes in and bangs 20 goals in next season, people forget. I think if you look, you're always going to lose football players. Any club in the world is going to lose football players. Even the best teams lose their best players eventually. Talking at the minute about Ada Hegerberg, Barcelona wanting her. Leon would go and sign somebody else if they did. If you lose top players, it's about how you replace them before you can judge whether it's been a disaster or not. I think if owner goes, they've already got a fantastic ready-made replacement. I'm sure they'd like to have both of them. But if Russo goes, if they sign someone that goes and outscores the next season, whether they're in the Champions League or not, people move on. And that's how football's always been. It sounds a little bit brutal, but it's the truth. That's what football's always been like.
What I will say, though, with Honour, and I know Eldon said it, and it is, I'm sorry, I know people got upset with me when I said it, it is true. Honour will be the massive one. And I feel like commercially, I know that Reece talks about the ones that bring in the most money and the one that everyone's talking about, media, whether it's right or wrong, is Alessia Russo. But I do think there will be people who can come in and score more goals than what she's doing. Not to say that a game is just goals. I think she's very good. And like you say, eventually she might be the best player in the world. But I feel like Honour, and maybe this is my bias now, but she is the best right back in the world. There's no right back now that touches Honour. Maybe Ashley Lawrence, but then that's what I'm saying. That's what you have to go and get. For me, Jade isn't there yet. I think she's great, but I don't think they would have to get an Ashley Lawrence. They would have to spend that money. I mean, people are here. Paul, the 2 offers they put in, people are putting in twice the amount. And United, like you're saying, they have to pay the money. And that's the only worry, isn't it, with me? And I think it's been a worry with lots of people because this isn't the first time we've been down this road with Man United. And yes, it'll hopefully be different if we're in Champions League, but we've seen it. Lauren James, Alex Greenwood, Tobin and Kristen, I know that's a bit different situation. Jackie Groenen, who left at the start. It's sort of as if United want to do it, but they want to do it half-heartedly. And hopefully that changes with the owners that come in. But I mean, what do you think, Reece? I suppose of Man United, of how it has been, and I know a lot of the talk has been these 2 players. They're going to be huge losses, and like you say, set us back. But Rich is talking about you have to, replace them, and Jade Riviere's in there. But I mean, that's a young player. That's a player that's come out of college. You can't expect her to then perform at that level, but that's what they will do.
I mean, I would fully expect the club now to know if Alessia and Honour are staying. I would expect for a club to know that information by now. And if they're not, then you can't really blame the takeover for lack of finances because you know that you're saving money on Alessia's current wage and Honour's current wage. I think as an outsider, and again, I don't know anything about the 2 deals, but I would expect Honour to probably go back to Spain, somewhere like Barcelona if she did leave. She's had 6 months to do that, 4 months since January to do that on a pre-contract if she's at the end of her current contract. So the fact that there's no agreement currently in place could be good news to Man United. But yeah, I think for Man United, I think they need to tie them both down, essentially, because they are up there with the best in class in their current positions.
I mean, Rich, I'm going to throw names at you, but do you see them signing like an Ashley Lawrence, like a Sydney Lohman? They top class players. That Taiba who scored goals for Inter Milan. I know you've recently interviewed her. Do you think that this season, this summer window is going to be different and they're going to sign world-class players? Or do you think it's just going to be the same and Emma Watson and etc. is the players that Man United fans can expect?
I think United have always done reasonably well recruitment-wise, given what they have. They don't have as big a budget as the other three. We don't know the budgets, but it's pretty common knowledge that they've grown it slightly over the last 5 years. Obviously, they started in the Championship, so they didn't need a humongous budget at that point, and they've grown slightly from that point up, and the players have got slightly better. The ones that are coming in, like Jade Riviere is a very, very good talent. Lisa Nalsund, obviously, we haven't really seen yet. Cascarino, whether she stays or doesn't stay, but they're at that sort of, like you say, they're good level. They're internationals, but are they great? Are they world class? I think Jade has the potential to be. I think Jade is at that sort of similar level to when you signed Honor. Honor was the sort of young up and comer, and 2-3 years later, she's become a world class player. I do agree with the sentiment that I think Honor would be a bigger loss than Alessia at the moment, and that's not to downgrade Alessia by any stretch of the margin. I think fullbacks are very hard to find. I think strikers aren't, especially in a team that creates a lot of chances. Look, people are always quick to criticise coaches, managers, directors of football, sporting directors, whatever, when things go wrong. The reality is, if your money isn't there, if you're not going to invest as much as the other teams, then you can't, we can joke about it. And, we had the conversation a few years ago that rumbled on and on and on about Pernille Harder. It was never going to happen. And I know it became obviously more a bit of a running joke than a serious thing, but United were never going to be able to go and sign a player like that. Ashley Lawrence, I'd be surprised. I mean, I heard rumours anyway, she may go to America. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I don't think United yet, in terms of their stature in the women's game, in terms of winning trophies, in terms of the money they're offering, can go and get the world-class players. I think they can get some very good players. I think they can even get great players. I think unless they get a little bit of luck or they get someone that just happens to be absolutely desperate to play for Man United, I don't think they can go and sign the players that a Chelsea go and sign, the really established ones like Sam Kerr, for example. I don't think they can. So that's on the club. That's on the club to invest more in it. And
why are we here then? Why are we here? Why are we here? Why am I here then, if that's the case? Go on, Reece. What are you saying?
I've seen a couple of comments saying, why do they want to leave when we're playing every game? Look, I can tell you, I work with players every single day. Players do not care what club they play for. It typically boils down to how much money are they going to get paid and what is a project for the next 2 or 3 years whilst I'm under contract with that club. I wouldn't get too bogged down thinking, why do they want to leave Man United? It's 95% of players, before I even tell them who the club is, the first question is, how much money is it? Or have I got a house? What's the project? Where do they see me for the next 12 months? And then they'll ask me what club it is. So I certainly wouldn't get bogged down in terms of why do they want to leave Man United? Why they're playing every game? In all honesty, wherever them two players go, they're probably going to play every game anyway, wherever they go. Yeah.
But a quick one now, because I think this is then what is frustrating people. It's they're seeing Real Madrid linked to Hederberg. I know that probably won't happen, but they're seeing Real Madrid linked to Harder and this one, and Real Madrid are signing that, and Roma have just made the Champions League quarterfinal. I know they only got so far, but this is then the frustration, because it is the case of this is Man United, and like what you said, Rich, we should be doing the best. We should be doing that. A lot of things are when something happens in Man United women's football, they sign Evie Rabjohn. Now everyone's sort of out the window talking about this kind of thing. I think we were saying it. We were talking about it ages ago. We were talking, there wasn't this much noise when Arsenal. There was noise, but when Arsenal robbed Ruby Mace, you know, or when this and that happened, when Chelsea took Watson from Sheffield, you know, but then when Man United do it, we need to change the rules. So I just think there's that clout, isn't there? I think even Mark's talked about it. When Man United come, they sell the stadium, they do this, everyone does that, everyone wants to play in the big stadiums. So they're happy in that respect, Manchester United, but in the respect of, I suppose, putting the money where their mouth is. But I think it's been like this, it's not quite there. And I suppose it comes back to this thing. I want to hear, Rich, what you say about Tuesday press conferences. And I've spoken to a few of your friends behind the scenes, and, you know, it's now out there. A lot of you are boycotting the press conferences because of the day and the time. But it's not just that, is it? It's a fact that they're, I don't know, hiding it away. It's not a priority. I think even Namrata says it seems to be like the women's team have thought about third and fourth choice rather than, you know, like I think Tom says it wouldn't happen if it was Erik ten Hag, and I think there's rules in place to that make sure it wouldn't happen. But would it happen anyway? You know, when we get new sponsors, it's always the men that are there, obviously. But you know, things like that, you know, it matters. I mean, what's your thoughts? Because obviously it's happening to you guys, the journalists. You know, why this week did you decide? I mean, I know it was in England, but why is this it? Is it going to be boycotted every week? You know, more people going to get on the point of boycotting it. I'm doing my own little thing, not trying to retweet this stuff, but, you know, just talk to us about it.
I mean, I think most of the national guys boycotted it, but out of necessity, really, because they were going to the England game. I think that's kind of what sort of broke things a little bit in terms of it was the day of an England game, which is a bit daft. Especially, I think it was a combination of factors. I think it was the fact that it was an England game. I think it's the fact it's an FA Cup semi-final as well. And to put a press conference 5 days before a game, and on the, you know, when you're playing for a place at Wembley, is stupid, to be honest. So yeah, I think when we talk about a boycott, it's hard to get. I think there was still, from what I heard, about 12 people on the call. You know, local journalists or, you know, students or whatever, and that's fair enough. Like, you can't force people to come off. Obviously, people have got to earn a living, and people that are not as sort of fortunate and as established as us that need to be on it for fear of their jobs. You know, no one's going to shout at people for going on a press conference. So, but yeah, I think none of us have really got to the bottom of why it's happening. Look, there's a lot I can't go into, but there's a lot of conversations happening, and a lot of conversations with United. Some journalists have had conversations with United this week, sort of publicly talking to the press officer. It's even gone over to the men's side and the men's press officer. Some of us have spoken to people off record behind the scenes about why it's happening, why is it being done. I don't think anyone's actually really got to the bottom of a reason why it is. I did joke today that we'd love a Tuesday press conference next week because they play on Wednesday, so they'll probably do it on Friday this week just to annoy us. But yeah, I mean, look, it's crazy because, and people say, why is it a big deal? It's because it's just not relevant. You know, you might ask a question yesterday about Alessia Russo or Ella Toon or Mary Earps or whoever. They might then have gone and got injured last night, and you've got all these quotes about a player that's not going to play in the game. Or, you know, they'll have probably 4 training sessions between Tuesday and the game. Someone gets injured. Well, again, half your stuff is irrelevant. So, yeah, I don't know why it's happening. All the other clubs managed to do Friday, or at the very least Thursday. Like, Thursday would be okay, but it's gone the other way. Like, a lot of them at the start of the season were Wednesdays. Now it's Tuesday, and yeah, I don't really understand it. I haven't asked Mark personally why it's happening. It frustrates me a little bit because people always say we want more coverage, we want this. They don't understand, and obviously a few of the journalists, including myself, sort of had a bit of a moan yesterday about what the WSL is like. I don't think people understand how closed off the WSL has become, and it's not all clubs, don't get me wrong, and even United. You know, I've done stuff with United. Obviously, I did the Martin Ho piece at the back end of last year. Some clubs are very good, but things just tend to drag on when we're trying to bring the league more coverage, and then it's the media that get criticised when we're not doing, like you say to me, Nat, you know, you want to hear from Honor or Vilda or Lucia. I'd love to interview those players. I'd love to interview Honor. I'd love to interview Vilda. I'd love to interview Lucia. It ain't going to happen. Realistically, if it is going to happen, it's probably going to take me 6 months to organise it, because it's just a lot more difficult than it has to be. And I think it's just an overall attitude within the WSL of doing the bare minimum, and that doesn't just stretch to media. I think that stretches to a lot of things, and that's probably a whole other conversation for a whole other podcast. But yeah, why they're having a Tuesday press conference for an FA Cup semi-final that's at the weekend and doing it on the day of an England game when they know the media are going to be travelling. As far as I'm aware from speaking to other clubs, all the media officers have, I don't know whether it's a WhatsApp chat or something else, but they have a group to sort of coordinate timings and make sure they try not to clash. There are clashes at times, and we know sometimes clubs can't do anything about that in terms of trading schedules and things like that. So if you have Chelsea versus Arsenal or something and both of them do their press conference at 1 o'clock, it's not ideal, but sometimes you can't do anything about it. But yeah, I mean, they must be aware, unless they're not in this group, I don't know, but they must be aware that other clubs are doing them on Thursdays or Fridays. So, but we're working on it. Look, we're working on it, and that's the thing. Like, people are quick to criticize the media, but we fight for so much to be able to bring you guys the coverage. We fight every day with the Sports Journalists Association, with the Football Writers Association. We go right to the top. We speak to clubs every day to try and fight for more coverage, for more access, because we want to do it. It's our job. But yeah, sometimes it's just made more difficult than it needs to be.
I think personally, and Reece come in after this, after I've just said my one point if you want to. Man United fans, I think we used to be the worst, and I think we used to be the ones that all the media hated. But really, we're the ones who have dragged it up, who have raised standards through podcasts like this, through podcasts that we've done over the years. I mean, when things came out, it was breaking it, the Cov News, the Dubai Gate, you know. And I feel like now, I think a lot of people saw Molly Hudson's come off. There's talking to other journalists that have come off. It's gone the totally opposite way, and I feel like there's a lot of, this is not everyone, there's a lot of young people now, and I feel like social media's gone this way anyway. And it's just sort of fake news. Everything's fake news if it's not the news they want to hear, which is strange because, like I said, I think it's the young people, and I feel like there's a big growth since the Lionesses won in Player FC, and I think we've even talked about it. You know, you can't say anything about Leah Williamson. She had a bad game. You say it, boom, you're a hater or whatever. So yeah, I don't know, but I feel like Man United was the worst. I feel like now they're the best. Fans, we always love the media. Who would have thought it? 360. Reece, what do you think?
Just in terms of a press conference, it had no bearing on me whatsoever. But just looking from an outsider on that, you know, there's this perception that women's football is growing at enormous rates. In reality, it's growing nowhere. It's not half as quick as what people think it is. In terms of the infrastructure behind the scenes, it's probably not been that much development in the last 3 or 4 years, although the FA and other organisations keep looking at these figures with 4 million and 5 million and 6 million, and these big figures look fantastic. But in women's football, it's not growing as quick as what it should be. And half of that reason is we're causing our own issues. Like the press conference, you know, it's just common sense. And it's caused an issue in terms of coverage of women's football and of the game. So, I mean, even if I kind of give a little story about 12 months ago, we set an interview with one of our clients with a journalist, basically to speak about her backstory. And we received a legal letter from a football club basically saying that stops. You do not organise direct contact with journalists. The interview had nothing to do with football. It was about her backstory as a person and her personality and sort of where she'd come from. And I said we received a legal letter for essentially instigating that interview to take place. And yeah, I just think women's football at times causes its own issues.
Yeah, I mean, people are saying it, we can rumble on, but listen, guys, we'll definitely get another one where we'll talk about all these kind of little issues, because I think I had to touch on the Tuesday thing because it came out, but it's the lack of due care and attention, due diligence, the people who want to. I don't know if that's the reason, but it's something not right, and I'm glad that it's talked about. But in it, Rich, we're the best fan base now. Yeah.
Every fan base causes like you said it yourself, social media at the minute, like I haven't seen it since the Euros, or bit like that before, in terms of now, I don't want to start going down the route of saying it's abuse and things like that. Like, you get the odd, I don't really, to be fair, I'm quite fortunate. But you get people jumping on things, but I don't know, maybe I've got a slightly thicker skin or I'm a little bit older, but it doesn't bother me as much. Like, I think you've got to just brush it aside. It's people on the internet that you don't know, that don't know you. Molly, obviously, it's a little bit different. Molly's a bit younger, and I think it was a bit new for her, what happened last week. But yeah, it's gone out a little bit of control. I mean, the Australia Federation put something out themselves about social media last week, and Beth Mead's dad was putting something out, and yeah, it's I think maybe there'll be a reckoning at some point in terms of how we move forward with that. But the media, trust me, the media don't put anything out to lie. We have nothing to gain from it, whether people like what we say, whether people agree what we say. I'll guarantee you nothing that goes out from me, Molly, Tom, Susie, Charlotte, whoever, nothing's a lie, whether people like it or not. Things might change, but nothing's a lie.
No, yeah, you heard it here first. Nothing's a lie. Listen, boys, I want to say thank you so much. I know it's a different platform, and we've had the same consistent viewers, and I just want to say thank you for everyone for watching, putting questions in, dropping a like on. There's 21 of you still now, so drop a like on. I want to see all those likes. I really appreciate it. Come and speak to us after, check the boys out. Rich is doing his own thing. Obviously, I'm on here, and obviously Reece has got his own stuff as well. But, Reece, if people want to check out all your players and how well they're doing, like where should they come, or what?
The National League.
Right?
The National League.
Oh.
Just follow Next Gen Sports and Entertainment, or follow myself on social media. Rich knows I'm quite vocal in terms of the best young players in the country are with us, and that's whether people like it or not, that's a fact.
Cool. Rich, how should people follow you? Obviously, I know you came on before you released your little Substack thing. I've paid £60 to read the one interview, and yes, I do want my honour back, Jay, because I love her and I think it's great. But I know the club are about Mary and Ella and Alessia and all that. But anyway, that's by the by. Where should people come?
Yeah, same. Twitter, Substack, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm on all. I think anybody that wants to follow me by now probably follows me. So, but yeah, I always put obviously Substack links out on social media. So yeah.
No worries. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it for you all watching. Like I said, drop comments in, stick with us. We've got some good content coming up before the final, before the semi-final, before Arsenal. So there'll be some good videos coming up that I think a lot of United fans will like. But yeah, take care, everyone. See you soon.